He was born into the heartland of China, in a humble village named Shaoshan, in Hunan province, on December 26, 1893. His name was Mao Zedong. His father, Mao Yuchang, was a hard, disciplined farmer who had pulled his family from poverty to modest success. His mother, Wen Kime, was gentle and religious, devoted to Buddhist practices. Their son would not follow either path. Instead, he would rise to become the founding father of a new China, and one of the most controversial figures in modern human history. To some, a liberator. To others, a tyrant. Education, from first class to final step. Mao began his education in a small village school where he learned the classics of Confucian philosophy. He was a bright, curious child, known for questioning authority and reading well beyond his years. At 13, his father pulled him from school to work the family land, but Mao resisted the life of a farmer. He devoured books in private, often reading historical novels, tales of rebellion, and military heroes from ancient Chinese dynasties. At 16, Mao returned to school, enrolling in a higher primary school in nearby Dongshan. Later, he studied at the provincial capital of Changsha, where he encountered new ideas, not only Chinese nationalism, but also Western philosophies, liberalism, and socialism. He studied the writings of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Charles Darwin, Adam Smith, and especially Karl Marx. In 1918, Mao graduated from the First Normal School of Hunan. Unlike many of his peers, he never traveled abroad for formal education, but he absorbed the global tide of revolution through books, lectures, and political action. His real schooling, as he would later claim, was the school of rebellion. How he became a dictator. After completing his education, Mao moved to Beijing, where he worked as a library assistant at Peking University. It was here that he mingled with China's leading intellectuals and revolutionaries, though he remained in the background. China at the time was in turmoil. The Qing dynasty had collapsed in 1911, but what followed was not unity or reform, but chaos. Warlords carved up provinces. The central government was weak. The country was humiliated by foreign powers. Mao became politically active in 1919 during the May 4th movement, a protest led by students and intellectuals against imperialism and foreign domination. His growing disillusionment with traditional Chinese values pushed him deeper into radical politics. By 1921, Mao had become a founding member of the Communist Party of China. He attended its first Congress, held secretly in a Shanghai house. In the early years, the communist movement was fragile, and Mao was not yet dominant. He worked mainly in his home province of Hunan, organizing peasants and spreading Marxist ideology. During the First United Front between the Communists and the Nationalists led by Chiang Kai-shek, Mao kept a low profile, but when the alliance collapsed in 1927, Chiang launched a bloody purge of communists, and Mao was forced into hiding. It was during this period that Mao began to shape his unique vision of revolution. While most communist leaders focused on urban workers, Mao turned his eyes to the countryside. He believed China's real strength lay in its millions of poor peasants. He began organizing rural Soviets and built up a revolutionary base in the Jiangxi province. In 1934, facing destruction by nationalist forces, Mao and his followers undertook the Long March, a desperate, year-long retreat of over 6,000 miles across mountains, rivers, and enemy territory. Only a fraction survived. But those who did emerged hardened, loyal, and bound together in a mythic tale of endurance. Mao rose to unquestioned leadership during this time, admired for his resilience and military cunning. By the time the Second Sino-Japanese War broke out in 1937, The communists were still in the shadows, but growing. While the nationalists bore the brunt of the fighting against Japan, Mao used the war to strengthen his position, gain rural support, and expand his army. When Japan surrendered in 1945, the Civil War resumed, and Mao was ready. In 4 years of brutal fighting, Mao's Red Army pushed back Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces. In 1949, the nationalists retreated to Taiwan, and Mao stood in Tiananmen Square to declare the birth of the People's Republic of China. He had gone from a peasant boy to the supreme leader of the most populous nation on earth. After acquiring dictatorship, rule over army and country. As chairman of the Communist Party, Mao wielded complete authority over China. His word was law, his vision unchallenged. He moved quickly to reshape the country. Land was seized from landlords and redistributed to peasants. Thousands of landowners were executed. Private enterprise was banned. The goal was clear: to create a classless, collectivist society built on the foundation of Marxist-Leninist ideology with Chinese characteristics. Mao launched sweeping social and economic reforms. The first major campaign was the 5-year plan, aimed at industrializing China and placing the economy under central control. Millions were moved into communal farms. The state controlled every grain of rice, every factory machine, every newspaper and school book. But the most catastrophic campaign came in 1958, the Great Leap Forward. Mao wanted to transform China into a global industrial power overnight. Steel production was emphasized, backyard furnaces were built in every village, and agriculture was collectivized under enormous communes. The result was disaster. Fake reports of bumper harvests led to the seizure of food by the state. Starvation swept across the countryside. Between 1959 and 1961, an estimated 20 to 45 million people died in what became one of the deadliest famines in human history. Yet Mao denied wrongdoing. Criticism was silenced. Those who spoke up were punished or re-educated. After the famine, Mao temporarily stepped back from direct control, but he never relinquished power. In 1966, he returned with fury, launching the Cultural Revolution, a campaign to purge China of bourgeois values, traditional beliefs, and anyone perceived as disloyal. Millions of youth, known as Red Guards, were mobilized. They turned against teachers, parents, intellectuals, and party officials. Ancient temples were destroyed. Books were burned. Schools and universities shut down. Public humiliations, beatings, imprisonments, and executions became common. The entire nation was thrown into chaos. Families were torn apart. Old friendships turned to betrayal. Faith in reason, education, and heritage collapsed under the weight of ideological purity. Even senior communist leaders were purged. Some were tortured. Others died in exile or madness. Mao claimed he was protecting the revolution. In truth, he was ensuring no one could ever rise to rival him. He ruled not just through policy but through a cult of personality. His portrait hung above Tiananmen Square. His little red book became a sacred text. His image was on walls, in hearts, in minds untouchable, unquestioned. List of bad deeds. The Great Leap Forward caused the deaths of tens of millions through famine, mismanagement, and forced collectivization. The Cultural Revolution led to widespread persecution, torture, executions, and cultural destruction across China. Ordered purges of intellectuals, artists, religious figures, and political rivals. Suppressed all forms of political opposition and free speech. Enforced total state control over media, education, and personal belief. Destroyed priceless cultural heritage. Confucian texts, Buddhist temples, historical relics. Encouraged mass surveillance and neighbor-on-neighbor denunciation. Used children as ideological enforcers in the Red Guard movement. List of good deeds. Ended centuries of feudal landlordism and redistributed land to the rural poor. Improved literacy rates and expanded access to basic education for millions. Established public health campaigns that eradicated diseases such as smallpox and the plague in many regions. United a fragmented and war-torn country under a single national government. Laid the foundation for China's later economic development, though his own policies caused economic collapse. These achievements are often overshadowed by the human cost, but they remain part of his historical legacy. Death date and cause. Mao Zedong died on September 9, 1976, at the age of 82. He had been in poor health for years, suffering from Parkinson's disease and multiple heart attacks. His death marked the end of an era. In his final days, he was surrounded by trusted aides and his inner circle, his mind slipping into silence as the world he had built trembled behind the curtain. Where buried, Mao's body was embalmed and placed in a crystal coffin inside the Chairman Mao Memorial Hall in Tiananmen Square, Beijing. His mausoleum remains a site of pilgrimage for many, even as his legacy continues to divide historians and citizens alike.